Baruch Hashem, good morning. Today is Yom Yud Beis Elul, Shnas Hakel, the 15th day in the Machzer for the Limud Daf Yomi in the Hemshech of the Rebbe Rashab Tafresh Samach Vov. Today we're going to learn pages Chavtes and Lamed, continuing the Maamar Lulav וערבה. So the Maamar of Lulav וערבה began with continuing the discussion of the whole Tichla or Isi Kates, that Maisa Mitzvahs is higher than everything. And we explain how the whole Tichla is talking about the Oineg, like Kol Yesh Sikusim, everything has an end. All the pleasures, that was not the beer of the Ibn Yechaya, for every Oineg that you have, there's an end. Chutz, besides for Torah and Mitzvahs, which doesn't have a limit. We explained at length the idea of Oineg, how Oineg is one of the higher levels, where Oineg is a koyach hamakif, and we explained at length that even though oineg is taka koyach hamakif in the nefesh, the etzem nefesh is something which is even more a much stronger level. Whereas oineg still has a chiluk of madregas. Etzem nefesh, when it's misgala directly. In etzem nefesh, we brought some examples, like by a chassan or from a tshuva, when someone does tshuva. But when it comes to oineg, even in Giluyim that come down there, is different levels. And Pamela, that's where we come and say that all the levels of Ishtalshlos, of the world, that come down here, all come from a level of Oineg, even the highest levels, even the highest level of all levels, the level of Tainug, that all has a Midol Gvul, because there's a Chiluk of Milo and Mata. But Torah and Mitzvahs, since it's the Etzem, does not have this Inyan. And as we're here kind of in the middle of the Inyan, where it starts over here a little bit before the beginning of page Chavtes, V'zeu l'chol tichla. This is what we mean when we say l'chol tichla. Hainu, b'chinas ha'oineg shebechlolos ma'aseh b'reishis. The general pleasure in the Eibishter is creating ma'aseh b'reishis. T'makar el muslim b'chinas chachma d'kol chachma sisa. The Eibishter created the world with chachma sh'reishis yishtashlos. K'mishkas b'zoyar b'inin vayemer likim nasa odam. The whole uvdi the b'reishis, all in yonim of ma'aseh b'reishis. Abba chachma amar li'ima was mamshich the bina. So the calls are all these levels, all, which means every aspect of ma'aseh b'reishis re'isi kates. Shakol b'chinas midog gvul, everything has a limitation. Neshurak b'china ha'ar levad, it is only a light me'a oinega elyon from the high pleasure shemislabish b'chinas ishtashlos, which was enclosed in b'chinas ishtashlos. Become close in the general will for ma'aseh b'reishis, like we said, Ratzon is another one of these kochas makifim. Ubchinas chitzenis Ratzon levad, but what's nimshach in the world is only chitzenis Ratzon memela. It's also reisik kates. Kaido the cholinin Ratzon the brias ha'olam. The real reason of brias ha'olam were actual Torah mitzvahs. K'maymer b'reishis. Why did the world create b'reishis? In the beginning, the Eibishter created the world. B'reishis is an acronym for B'shvil Yisrael. Shenikrayim b'reishis B'shvil HaTorah. Noitriken. That's the inner will. But the creation of the world is only chitzenis in order to achieve that. Just like the Ratzon, who are the Alma. The pleasure the Eibishter gets just from the creation of the world is just the aura of or the pleasure that we have, or the pleasure that, or any level of Einig that is Gal in the creation of the world, is just the aura. Shaking the Ratzon. The Torah mitzvahs, b'chinas primius v'atzmos ha'ratzvah. In the Meluvish b'zeh, b'chinas atzmos ta'anuk elyon. In the Torah mitzvahs, you have the etzem of the pleasure from above. V'zeh l'chol tichla reisik kates, l'chol b'chinas kiloyin v'oinik. Every level of pleasure, again, or kiloyin, we said earlier, another type of pleasure is klois ha'nefesh, right? Hainu b'chinas ha'oinik l'kishab ha'neshamas. Even the pleasure of a likus that the neshamas have. Side the Tanya of the Neshama is going up in different levels of Gan Eden. Or the levels that the Neshama down here can comprehend or be misbein elikos. Or the level of Tanya which the Eibishter lights in the Seder Shtalshlos. That's only a light, only a shine from the pleasure. The level of mitzvahs is eternally wide, or very wide. the B'chinas ha'oinig sheb'ratzon, the mitzvahs, the will of mitzvahs, B'chinas pnimis v'atzmos ha'oinig shlamai lamai, B'chinas v'ratzon ha'oinig v'ratzon ha'eder shtashlos. The will and mitzvahs is higher than the will and the pleasure of Seder Shtashlos. But Ikar, we know mitzvahs ma'ases dafka, when the mitzvahs are actually done. So if ma'ases dafka all machshava d'chila. The zeh dafka b'chinas pnimis ha'kavana, b'chinas pnimis ha'tzmus yizbarach she'yakim mitzvahs ma'ases. The Eibishter wants that there should actually be a kiyam mitzvahs. Zeh dafka nimshach b'chinas atzmus ha'tainuk. That's what draws down, that's a matainuk. K'maymer nachasruach lefanai, that when you do a mitzvah, there's a nachasruach in front of the Eibishter, Shalmarti v'nasar ritzoni. That what creates the tainug of nachasruach, the amarti v'nasar ritzoni, the ma'aseh mitzvahs that actually happened. B'chinas ha'tainug ha'atzmi, shezeini nachasruach lefonai, udafka kasher nasar ritzoni mipal mamash, when it's actually done. So the world being created is taka hachana for kiyam mitzvahs. But because the ma'aseh pa'il only happens when a yid comes down here and does a mitzvah, the ta'atzmas ha'oinig is only nimshach through the mitzvah. V'chein la'osid. So when Mashiach comes, when the true draw of will come down through the Torah mitzvahs, we're going to have the gilu in Seif, and we said the Tachas B'Yas Olam will be down here lamata. What we do now is create a vessel for Elikos. The scholars said the revelation that this Keli now could hold this level of Elikos, realize it. The B'chinas Atzos are in Seif Yizgal Lamata Dafka, the Etzim of the Eibishter will be revealed down here. We're going to see the simple Etzim, pleasure, which that is the real Etzim HaTainug. But like we said earlier, the idea of Etzim HaNefesh, where everything is equal. So this is kind of where we stopped yesterday, discussing this idea of the third Pirush, or of L'chol Tichler, E.C. Kates, where L'chol Tichler here again refers to Oinig in Klolos Ishtashlos. Kind of more a direct pirush to the general theme that we're trying to say over here, how Tachas B'Yas Olam is for this Gilu Eretz Seif, or Gilu Tainug Ha'atzmi, as we're calling it now, which is going to be B'Yamei Mashiach. Here we understand people that do mitzvahs are called those that do the Eibishter's will. What does it mean that we're doing the Eibishter's will? The Eibishter's will in creating the world existed before the world was created, before Matan Torah, before there was any Torah mitzvahs. In the beginning, before. Bekadmin means before was creation. The Hainu, B'chinas HaKeser, Bekadmin over here before, or the higher level, goes on Keser. You do the Keser of B'chinas Ratzon. Keser is the idea of Ratzon, which again, one of the Koichs HaMakifin, B'shkas of Katzina Ratzon Ta'atrenu, Ratzon will surround you like cold, but again, like a Keser surrounds you, Ratzon surrounds you. Siv Ki Amarti, Oilom Chesed Tibone, Tainu Amira B'Ratzon. The Amarti, the world would be created through Chesed. The Amira is Ratzin Mishkasav Akmacher. V'chein Baruch Sha'amar V'Oya Oilam. The idea of Amira is also Ratzin. Uv'Zoyar Isa Katzolik B'Re Usei, when the Eibishter wanted Lamivri Alma again Ratzin. Uv'Reish Hermenusa in the beginning of the will. Uv'Eitz Chaim K'Sha'olah B'Tzoyin HaPashat. We see all these levels of Bereshis Bara, the idea of Bekadmin, the idea of Ratzin over there, level of Keser. Hare, Shekvar Hoyam Shachsar Ratzin Beis B'Yas Olam, right? When the Eibishter created the world, we already had Dam Shachsar Keser, we already had Dam Shachsar Ratzin. Imkein Ma'uin and Shisrael and Oisin Yitzenu Shalmakma, they Kiyam HaMitzvahs. Gam Yipole, also it's wondrous, Lefi Zeh, Mashal HaMitzvahs Omer L'Shem Yichud Kucha Bricho Ushchintei. When we do a mitzvah, we say L'Shem Yichud Kucha Bricho Ushchintei. We said earlier, Kucha Bricho, the Nizbar Le'el, yeah, the Shizel Yichud Soivev Kalam and Malakalam, right? Kucha Bricho is the level of Soivev. Shchinte is the Shechenes Mislabeshes, the level of Memale. Yichud Kuchabrichu Shchinte is the Yichud Soivev of Memale. Hanasal de HaMitzvahs. Umeachashek Verhoyam Shachsaratzim B'B'Yas Olam. Since we already draw down the Ratzim B'B'Yas Olam, the Ratzim we know is Keser. Keser U'Kina Soivev Keyidua. In Cain, like Verhoya Yichud Kuchabrichu Shchinte Beis B'Yas Olam, we already had this unification of Kuchabrichu Shchinte when the world was created. V'zeu Abba Amar Le'imo, which we said in the previous paragraph, at the end of page Chavtes, I believe. Which we started where we started today. The Chemchina Zol Malchus calls them which every level there's a level of Seviv, the level of Mamale, which means Lefi Erech, the Mamale, the level under it, it becomes a Makif for it. So Zah and Malchus also has this idea of Seviv and Mamale. So again, even Mamale that creates a koyach up, his havos has to have a seviv in it. Hamakev v'noisim koyach bar pnimit, which goes to Mamakacher, like you said, other places. So kind of after everything we said, we could kind of maybe start understanding why the Yidden are called Oisin Yitzir Shamakim is Dafka on mitzvahs, and why Yichud Kutsha Bricho Shchinte is Dafka through Maaseh HaMitzvahs. As we said, Achainu knew the B'ametz B'chinas Ratzin the B'rias Olam Tzigin Gam Kin L'Hamshech Ata, there's a Sultata. Taka, there is a will for B'rias Olam, and that will in itself separate from Maaseh HaMitzvahs. Taka, we have to draw down. The beginning, the Eibusher created the world. The Eibusher just wanted to Chafetz Chesed L'Hamshech Chasodim. But now we have to draw down from below. Etzem of the Eibusher is higher than in the Sphira. Remember, Antuchad the Luleb Cheshbon Yud Sphira's Klal. The Eibusher is one and not in the Cheshbon of Esther Spheres. Chakim, the level of Chachma. Luleb Chachma Yediyah. But now with any Chachma that we know, so there's no Sphira over there. This is that we call the Eibusher Chacham, who rak lahafshid many Yisbarach in Heder Chachma, to remove the idea of lack of Chachma. Of Lishu Chachma, if we do Chachma Mamash, but not the Eibusher has a level of Chachma Mamash. Hanika Chachma Yediyah, which we consider known Chachma. That's not shaykh to the Eibusher. Ad, V'lav Mikol Inun Midas Klal, there's no level of Midas by the Eibusher at all. Ukamoi. So Mushla Lamugdal Ba'erchim with Chachma Bina, that's the same way the Eibusher is removed from Chachma Bina and Midas. Even the Chachma Akav is higher than it. Shegama Rodin Mashasod Berusi Lemivra. This is the Eibusher wanted to create the world. Who Gamkin Ba'ad at Tzimtzum. It started off with Tzimtzum. That is the beginning of the of sort of say that Tzimtzum. The Ratzin Oisi is Tziner. Ratzin is the words of a pipe. Pipe is the idea of creating a Tzimtzum. And it's a brand new thing Lagabi the Eibusher. That every day the Eibusher renews the creating of the world. It's a renewal Lagabi the Eibusher. It's a Tzimtzum. It's not the Chal related to the Eibusher. It's not in this level at all. We can't have to draw it down. That's this little tata, which now is the enablement for creating the world. The Eibusher should kiviyachol again be mitzvah himself. And a little bit more, like we know, maybe Rosh Hashanah. We know this a little bit, that Rosh Hashanah, there's more of a specific stress on this. We create a new Ratzon for having the world. It's the general will for being a king. From the Rosh Hashanah, everything goes back to the way it was. Because it goes back to the way it was, there's a lack of Ratzon. We need to then draw down that there should be a will for Melucha, but there'll be creation of the world. Yud Psukim Malchius, currently Yem through saying the 10 Psukim of Malchius, and we remember Yem Rishon Shayim, it's like Chafetz Chesed, we kind of remind the Eibusher Kiviyachol that initially it was Chafetz Chesed, U'mamshichim B'chinas Haratzon Esem Mechodesh, this idea of Chafetz Chesed, B'Rosh Hashanah, but again through Asus Tata. So obviously this is specific on Rosh Hashanah, but like we already said, and as we're going to conclude now again, every minute and every day you have to renew the will. The Hainal there to the mitzvahs. Kamaimer, tonight it's not Kadosh Baruch Hu Maaseh B'Reishis. Chumashikos of Eila told us. B'schus Eila Shmois, Eila told us. B'schus of the Eila Shmois of the Yidden. B'schus Eila HaMitzvahs, and because of the mitzvahs that the Yidden are going to do. L'chein dafka Talmidei Chachamim oiskim b'Torah Nikroim banoim dafka Talmidei Chachamim are called the builders. She'oiskim b'binyanu shel olam. That'll be partial to, at a simple level, through Torah we're mamshich this will for the olam. We make the world exist. They make the world exist that was created by Sarah. So we kind of over here started touching on the answer to the question why Dafka Ma'aseh Mitzvah are called Yotzei Shel Makim, and why Yichud Kutra Bricho Shchinte, even though it already happened, why there's something unique that happens through Torah Mitzvahs. Because now we're mamshich this resultat Talia Milsa, the idea which is we kind of touching over here that happens through Torah Mitzvahs. This that we created the world and we make the world continuously exist. It's through doing business honestly. Creating the world nikra malacha begematya keil adnai. That's the name of doing. Malacha Ma'aseh Bereishis, the work of Ma'aseh Bereishis. Hamachadav Shutuva goes on Ma'aseh Bereishis. So Mamshichim B'chinas Yischat Zois, this idea of malacha, of the Eibishter, the Asiyah of the Eibishter, we do through our malacha, al de Ma'aseh Matam Emunah Shnikar Gamkin malacha. K'meshkatzav Gabi Yoina Ma Malachtecha. Or Pirush HaMefarshim, the Mefarshim explain when they asked Yoina, what do you do? They say, they're asking if he does an honest business, because that is really what malacha is. There's no chashash of an avera, basic masa or business. There's a mamshich sheyumshach save gamkim malacha. So because that the Eibusha should also come down in the idea of malacha. So we have over here kind of ma'aseh mitzvahs being one oifen of drawing down this mechadash v'tuvay. Torah mitzvahs, we touched on this a little bit, and obviously we discussed more about Barucha. But here we also have another oifen to be mamshech the world existence through Ma'aseh Matan B'Emunah. So we could start discussing this. According to what we say in other places, there's two types of work. The Beis Minei Evet, which kind of correspond to two types of servants or workers or slaves. Ha'echad shavidasei aveda grua. He has a lower level or a bad type of work. Mechativas eitzim. He hacks holts. He cuts wood. She'ein ze mikaver the adam lases ba'atzma. It's not respectable for the master to do it himself. She'achtiv eitzim ba'atzma elarich shulchan chademer to set up a table. She'eved oisa oisam whoever oved the mashamish b'davar she'adin ba'atzma lehoyer blase klal asesam. The Eved is kind of doing it in an oifen that the master, something that the master would never lower himself to do. It's kind of a poor Eved. He's enjoying from his work of his hands and the labor, the toiling of his work. It's a bad work, and it's from his level and his type, because he's an Eved. And at the good times, he gets paid for it. You get paid for your work. This is what you're shaykh to. This is what your level is up to. So that's the type of work you handle, and that's the type of payment you get. You do more edela or brainy avodas, which the master himself would do. Like business, or or when you're cutting holes in diamonds, or cut stones, or the like. So, these are respectable malachos, which the master himself will get richer from them. When the slave does it, he is called his servant. Completes the work that the master himself would do it, and maybe even does do it at times, but the ever does it instead. When we say we can understand this in avoid of doing the world. Creating the world comes from the high level of dibur from Malchus of Atzilus, because that's where, like we said, that's where the kind of there's the hamshacha of I guess koyach hasoviv into the koyach hamamali to create the world, to be able to have the creation of the world. V'uinin masha dibur shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu Chashem Maisa, by the Eibishter dibur alone, speech alone, is called Maisa. Shezel k'mosh la'avoida agru da chativas eitzim. It's a low avoida of cutting wood. The lav orchid the malkul ishtoy b'milin de'ediet. A king usually should not busy himself or concern himself or involve himself with lower levels, with works of peasants. V'b'chinas yirida v'shiflus g'doyla, it's a very, very low, yirida, very low going down for the Eibishter. K'maimer azal b'makim gedula, saying the Eibishter's greatness, shama tamoitzin v'snusay, that's where we see his humility. Tzrichim was a eved ani. Usually you need a poor ani, sheyavoi b'schar la'aved avodazu, should come get paid for this avodah and get his payment. M'kamakim tzarich liyis k'maimer azal, even though you're taka coming and doing an avodah grua to get your payment, it has to be al tiuk avodah m'masham shemesrav al manas l'kabel pras. Don't do it in order to get the payment. The close avodah is he avodah sheivdim rak b'shvil kabos pras. It's a type of avodah which the purpose of the avodah is not the benefit from the avodah. The worker is only doing it for the pras, for the money, or the reward. V'loy avodah sichlis. The avodah sichlis, when you're working in your brain, you enjoy the actual work. The master himself does it, and the master is not paying himself. He's doing it because the avodah itself is required. You work maybe on yourself. The lower level of avodah, you're doing it for the Eibishter. You're not doing it l'kabel pras. But the idea of this avodah is only for a schar and a pras. The avodah itself has no real benefit on its own. If you could have done without it, it wouldn't have had to get done. It's required in order to get the pras. But you're not doing it for the pras. There's three levels of evet. There's Hoisha Avdecha, Ki'ana ve'evin ani. They say mitchila, we say you're Ka'ani Oimed b'Pesach, which you're standing outside. Achakach mekabel pras, and then there's a third level. Shaladei hashiplos k'shamash b'los hatzim b'tfilah shemitzchan, and you lower yourself and you beg by the Eibishter. Harei poyol l'mayla sheyigankin v'chinas ha'yirida v'shiplos k'vyachal ha'avas lachas ha'elmas. And this is when we beg that we do an avodah lamata, where the Eibishter k'vyachal to come and do the avodah lamata. So we'll stop here, but the Indian, which we discussed today, is again, we continue with the idea of l'chol tichla, meaning ma'aseh mitzvos payil, and we started by asking what's the idea of oisin tzinin shalmakim. So we said to understand why oisin tzinin shalmakim is dafka people that are mekayim the mitzvahs, because they're the ones that are mamshich the real ratzin. But then we asked, this all existed, the ratzin elim exists by b'riyas ha'olam. B'nei Shurman is the Malka, the Kadmin Bara. Kesser started the ratzin, the idea of Kesser was from the beginning. And also, Yichud had to happen already then. So we started discussing how there's the level of that this is done taka, that that's what Talia Milsa is done through Torah mitzvahs. Or then we said another Oifen of Matzah Muna, and then we broke off two in Yanei of Avodas Eved, which we're now in the middle of discussing, and we'll continue tomorrow. Mitzvah Hashem. A guten Tag.